What's up, guys? So for today's video, I'm going to be going over a subject that's been requested quite a lot in the past few days. The subject is IGLing. So basically this video is addressed to any player that's, either looking to take their IGLing to the next level or just looking to get into IGLing in the first place. So yeah, I'm going to be going over kind of the fundamentals and, the tools that you need in order to, be a good IGLing and to have like a positive impact on your team. And yeah, so just a friendly reminder. So we passed 200 subs on the channel. So thank you all for the support. I didn't think we'd reach that goal that fast, to be honest with you, but we reached it. And now our next goal is 500 subs. So, I said this in every single video. If you like this content, if you enjoy it or you learn something from it, anything positive related to sort of how you feel about it, just the best way to support it is by subscribing. If you want to see other types of content or more content of that nature, the best way to make it happen again is by subscribing. This being said, this video is basically based on a request that I've received a lot in the past few days. So if you guys also have requests of that sort of nature, so either you want me to do a specific video on a specific agent on a specific map or just a specific subject overall, to be honest with you, just ask away in the comments section and I'll see what I can do. So without further ado, that's pretty much it. Thank you all for the support again, and let's try to jump right into it. Alright guys, so for the first part of this video, I'm going to be talking about sort of the basics, so just the definition of IGLing overall, the skills that are required when you're trying to IGL, just basic stuff like that is probably going to seem a bit obvious to a lot of you, but just for the sake of this video, I'm going to be going over some pretty specific stuff, so I just want to make sure that everybody's on the same page as to like what we're talking about, right? So for starters, I'm just going to define IGLing. So for those who don't know, IGL stands for in-game leader. This is basically the role or the title that we give one person on a Valorant team that is basically the leader, right? You can also kind of transfer that definition in regular sports, right? So a captain of a sports team. So you can think of quarterback, right? You can kind of think of the IGL in Valorant as like a quarterback. His role is to direct the team towards like the best direction possible in terms of like calling plays and adjustments and stuff like that. That's kind of what a quarterback does in football, if you're familiar with it. But yeah, no, Nigel is basically just the leader of the team. He basically calls the shots, as people like to say it. And yeah, I guess this is kind of like the most complete definition I can give you. But like I said, most of you are sort of familiar with what an IGL is, so I'm not going to get into it too deep. Next up is sort of the skills that are recommended when you're trying to IGL. Obviously, when you're calling plays in a video game, you need like good knowledge of the game. So having a good mind for the game would be the first point in terms of, what an IGL should have in terms of values or skills. Second, I would say obviously good communication skills, right? When you're calling plays, the word calling is in there. You have to communicate what you want your team to do. And having good communication skills is obviously going to make your life much easier. Not only your life, but also your teammates' life also, because if they have no idea what the fuck you're talking about, it's going to be pretty hard to, direct this team towards like the right direction. Third skill is good people skills. Now, this is something that a lot of teams and IGLs in the tier 3 scene just don't understand, is that to be a good IGL, there's a big bond like between the IGL himself and the other players in terms of friendship, trust, loyalty, and all that stuff. And the reality is, having good people skills, what I mean by that is just like actually knowing how to deal with people to a point where they're just not going to hate you, right? I see a lot of teams in tier 3 where the IGL on that team is the most hated player on that team. And that just doesn't make any sense, because let's say I'm a player and I'm playing for a team and my IGL, I hate his guts. I would slap the shit out of him. You're not necessarily going to succeed as well as, if you had like an IGL that you actually respect and, enjoy being around. So, when it comes to IGLing specifically in Valorant, you need good people skills, right? You need people to, there's a fine difference between respecting and liking. I think people can like you, but in a lot of you know, a lot of times when you're in a leadership position, people will not like necessarily like you, because obviously like you have to take decisions for the best of the team that, you know, regular players just don't necessarily understand. But just basically having their trust and respect is, you know, the basic of it, right? Being liked is sort of a bonus when you talk about having, you know, good people skills. But the bare minimum that you could possibly have is their trust and respect. If you don't have neither of those, you just won't get anywhere with that team. So again, this goes to any team out there, and you know, you guys probably know who you are. If you have an IGL who is literally the most hated person on your team, I don't know what the fuck you're doing. Okay. So that's the third skill. The fourth skill is obviously being a strong leader. So again, when I defined IGLing, I kind of defined them as a leader. I mean, the word is in the fucking, you know, in-game leader. There's leader in it. Like it's pretty obvious you need to be a strong leader. So, you know, what I mean by strong leader is it kind of goes with good people skills, but in terms of leading, you have to understand sort of the goals and, you know, the orientation of the team in terms of what they want to what they want to accomplish. And you know, you need to be aware of the value of every single player, and you know, the kind of positions that they strive in order to actually call good plays and, you know, direct them towards the right direction. So that basically concludes like my sort of small intro. You know, again, a lot of you are just familiar with it, but I'm just, you know, reminding people in case some people just don't know or they forgot or whatever the reason might be. So yeah, that's basically it, and we'll move on to the next topic. All right, so the next thing I'm going to be talking about is using blueprints. Now, this is just like my personal preference when I try to describe this. But basically, what I mean by using blueprints is not like actually making a call like piece by piece by piece by piece. So what I mean by that is like you're in the buy phase, right? You have 30 seconds to get your call in, and you're saying, all right, KJ set up outside B with your turret like this. Okay. Next up, Omen outside A, holding space. KO, like, I don't know, tiles throwing a knife for tree. And Sova top mid, darting for bottom mid. And, you know, Jed just going with KO taking mid space. Like, you see how long that is? And that is like, you're basically micromanaging your team. And, you know, we'll get to that, you know, as we go down with the video, because micromanaging is a subject in there. But like, you don't like stop calling like this. Like you see like the format that I called is like so specific and so like, it's not concise, right? And again, I'll get to that later because that is also a sort of, you know, a subject of the video. But like what I mean by using blueprints is that realistically speaking, if you don't have a strat book, you should not have an IGL either, because you like, so that's where like the blueprint word comes from, is like you should be using your plays as like a blueprint, and if you have to make adjustments based off like either an opponent's tendency or like a certain thing that, or like a certain goal that you want to accomplish that, you know, the play that you had initially doesn't necessarily have, you can make like the sort of adjustments. So for example, let's say this piece of utility, like instead of saying all of this, I could have that in a strat book that all my teammates are aware of and just call that a mid or 1-3-1 or a mid default, right? So all you have to say, instead of saying, okay, KJ outside B with turret and then like all of that, you can just say, all right, mid default. That's like literally a second to 2 seconds. You have 28 seconds extra to, you know, either go over like something that your teammates should be careful of that the enemy does like often, or overall it just gives time to your teammates to set up, right? Which is also very important. So you can literally just say that, and if you have to make a certain adjustment, like let's say, I don't know, bro, like let's say you want to sort of have information on market. Well, instead of like, you know, darting tree, you could or darting knifing tree, you should, you know, you could potentially knife market. So you could basically just say, all right, we'll do the regular like 1-3-1 or mid default, whatever you call it, but instead of knifing tree, we'll just knife market. You see how simpler that is? Like that's like, you know, you have to use like your blueprint. So like you should make like 2 to 3 defaults on attack and like a couple setup plays on defense, and you should just setups overall and like a couple micro plays, but like you should have a blueprint of like pretty much what you want to do on attack and defense, and then when you have to make adjustments, you just, you can make them based off of that initial blueprint that you have. You don't have to say like repeat, okay, KJ outside B with her turret, and then KO, instead of knifing tree, you knife market, and then Jet, you do the same thing, and then Sova same thing, and then Omen same thing. Like, you see how long that is? Like, it's almost boring. You almost want to fall asleep listening to that. Like, use your blueprints, right? So before even like discussing who the IGL actually is, your team should have a strat book put together and saying like, okay, this is what we're trying to accomplish on attack. These are plays that we can make, or defaults or whatnot. And on defense, these are the setups that we want to run, small micro plays here and there. And then you just have like a basic outline of how you want to play the game on a specific map. And then your IGL can come in and say, okay, we're going to run this round, or we're going to run this play this round, or we're going to run this except with a small adjustment. So I use this example with the KO knife, but it can be literally anything. It could be the Sova dart as well. You can dart market instead, and still knife tree. Like, there's a lot of, there are a lot of things that you can do. It's basically, again, this comes down to having a good mind of the game. So making the necessary adjustments that you think are going to benefit your team. So that's the first thing, right? Because a lot of these IGLs out there, they really just call like the way I did in the first 5 to 10 seconds of this part. Like, they make everything so specific and boring and long, where they rarely have any time to get their call in before the 30 seconds of the buy phase like run out. And it's just very frustrating, because that's not how it works, right? That's like one of the biggest misconceptions when it comes to IGLing in Tier 3. I feel like a lot of IGLs have that style, and it's just incorrect. It's just not good, and it's not the right way. So make sure that when you want to IGL, have a strat book. So if you're watching this right now and you're an IGL and your team doesn't have a strat book, that is your step one. Like, that is my number one recommendation for you. I don't care if you're a good IGL or a shitty IGL, you should have a strat book first, and then you can reevaluate how you want to improve there. Okay, because realistically speaking, if you don't have like an outline of like how you want to play a certain map, everybody's just gonna get fucking confused when you're talking the way I was talking earlier, and it's just like you're not gonna get anywhere. All right, so the next thing I'm gonna be talking about is confidence. So I actually pulled out like a notepad here. I'm just gonna note kind of the skills that I sort of go over, just so that you guys can kind of use that as a reference point. So the first skill that I talked about was using blueprints. So what I meant by that, I mean, if you actually go back and watch it, it's basically just using plays, right, as a blueprint, and basically adapting off of that, instead of just calling everything agent by agent, util by util. Like, it's too long, it's boring, and it's just not the correct way to IGL. So that's the first thing. Second thing is be confident. So and again, I've coached like for almost a year now, and I've been on like in multiple teams, and dude, I've seen people that IGL that like literally don't believe they can shoot their gun themselves. And that doesn't necessarily go as like be a confident player. That's like a whole other story. But like, you should be a confident caller, like, at least, right? Like the bare minimum is being a confident caller. I don't care if you're confident like when taking fights or whatever, but like if you want to IGL, you need to be confident. Okay, there's nothing there's nothing that's like more cringe of like hearing your IGL say something and you can hear it in his voice that it's like he's not even sure of it, right? Because like I said earlier, IGLing is a big thing that involves like trust and loyalty and all that stuff. And like, if you're not being confident, how do you expect your teammates to trust you, right? So you really have to keep that in mind when you're IGLing. You need to remain confident. And again, like, everybody's going to make like bad calls and stuff like that. And again, this is something I'm going to be going over later. But like, even if you're not sure if the call is good or not, it's better to have like a bad call that is confident than a good call that isn't confident. Because what happens is, even though like your call is good, if you sound like shit when you say it, how are your teammates supposed to be convinced that it's a good call, right? So the chances are like they're going to go in this round with the mindset that they're already going to lose it, because they think that in your mind, you also think that way, right? Whereas if you call like a bad call, but it's confident, your teammates don't even have time to think about like, okay, is the call good or not? They just trust you, and they're like, okay, like he's confident that it's gonna work, so we're just gonna do it. And you're gonna have like, you're gonna find like way less problems with that than if you call like a good call, but like in the most like like non-confident way ever, you know. So that's basically my first thing. When it comes to you know, being confident, like it's, you just have to sound confident. Like that's the first thing, you have to sound confident. The second thing is really just like not going into details too much, right? You don't need to explain why your play is going to work. You just have to call it. You say, okay, this is what we're doing. And if you say it in a confident enough like tone, people won't even have time to sort of question like, okay, how is this play going to be good? How is this play going to like benefit us and all that stuff? They don't even have time to think about it. And frankly, they're not even going to think of thinking about it because they already know that it's good, that it's the good call, right? Think of IGLing like being a salesman. You really just have to sell the product, which is your call, to your team. But the only difference between a salesman pitch and a calling in Valorant is that you don't need to explain why your product is the best product on the market. You don't need to do that. All you have to do is present it in a confident enough manner to like that it just brings it to a point where your teammates just completely trust it. You know, no matter what, you know, whether it's a shitty call or a good call, they're just gonna trust it no matter what, right? And that's what you want. That's what you're looking for when you're IGLing. So that's number 2, being confident. All right. So if you're out there, like you're an IGL, you're a player, and your IGL isn't being confident, give them that piece of advice. Say, yo, like we're all on your side. You're calling for us. We like either you chose, you know, that person, or you know, whatever the reason might be that, you know, that person's the IGL. You just have to remind them like, okay, well, we trust whatever you say, so be confident. You don't need to doubt yourself. You don't need to sound like you're a little bitch. You don't need to do any of that. Just call the call and we'll do it, right? Sometimes like reassuring your IGL in that specific way can, you know, really just put them on another planet when it comes to improving from being like a decent IGL to a good IGL, right? So that's number 2, being confident. All right, guys. So the next thing I'm going to be talking about is what I call the 50% rule. So when it comes to calling, usually you're going to do it in the buy phase, right? And what you have to keep in mind is that the buy phase is 30 seconds long, right? So what I mean by the 50% rule is that you should have your call in by 15 seconds in, like into the buy phase, right? So it's 30 seconds, and you know, before like the first round of each half, like it's 45, but like regardless, right? Your call shouldn't be like, it shouldn't take more than 15 seconds to get it in. And what I mean by that is like, just stop yapping. You know what I'm saying? It's like a lot of you are just like doing kind of what I did. It's like, okay, we do a 1-3-1, and then either you're like saying something that just is completely useless, or you're trying to explain why your call is good. And like I said in the past, like, you know, in the past point, like you don't need to explain yourself. So like what you should be doing is getting your call in. Give yourself 15 seconds. Say, okay, we're doing 1-3-1. And then if people don't necessarily remember what that means, you can just remind them. But by 15 seconds, like on the dot, you should be done. Like you should not be talking about the call itself anymore, right? The extra 15 seconds should go to either you saying like, okay, be aware they could do this, like really just like calling out tendencies that they do, or give time to your players to actually set up, right? Because a lot of the time, like a lot of you IGLs are like calling. It takes like 20 seconds, and then your teammates actually get an idea of what you mean by like 25 to 27 seconds, and then they have 3 seconds to set up. And you know, as cool as it is in scrim, you have ghost mode, so you can, you know, move a little bit faster. I mean, the reality is you don't want to like put your teammates in that situation in a tournament, because you know, chances are like your call is going to be useless in the first place because people are just not going to be in their required positions. So that's like the third point that I have for you guys is like, keep your calls concise and straightforward, right? So like I said at the beginning of this video, instead of saying like, okay, KJ do this, KO do this, Jet do this, etc., 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 you can just like actually make a strat book with your team and say, yo, this is called 1-3-1, or this is called a mid default, or fuck, you can call it whatever you want, bro. You can call it Oreo, ketchup, whatever the fuck you want, but make it like concise so that when you actually want to get the call in, all you have to say is, okay, we're doing 1-3-1, right? Doing a 1-3-1, but instead of throwing the KO knife in tree, we can, we'll throw it in market instead, right? These like, okay, we're doing this, but like that's like the best way to actually call an adjustment and how to like actually counter a tendency that, the opponent likes to do. And a lot of you IGLs out there just don't do that. You just yap for 20 seconds and then your teammates have 10 seconds to set up. So stop doing that, right? So, keep your calls concise and straightforward. 50% rule. So that's the third thing. Sorry. So yeah, I mean, like I said, just you don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to talk about your weekend. You don't need to, do anything. All you have to do is get your call in, give yourself 15 seconds, and then after that, you can dedicate these extra 15 seconds to either questions that your teammates might have if they don't necessarily remember what the play is, because that happens a lot. And again, it's not anybody's fault. I mean, everybody's human, right? It can be pointing out adjustments, just analyzing what the opponent has. So if they're on eco, certain ults that they have and all that stuff, right? Usually you should be doing that beforehand, but it's you can do it after as well. I mean, unless that your play is like really built around the fact that they have a certain ult, like you can do it after, no problem. Multiple things that you can do to actually give that time value instead of just yapping about nothing. Okay. All right, so next thing I'm going to be talking about is actually putting value on your players' trust. Now, like I explained at the beginning of this video, a lot of like a big part of IGLing is really like the bond between you and your players, right? Like there's a lot of trust that goes into it. There's a lot of loyalty that goes into it, and putting value on your players' trust is very important because, like I said earlier, like if people don't trust you, how the fuck do you expect them to actually do your call like correctly and confidently and all that stuff, and to make it work, right? Because like I said, like this kind of comes back to when I was talking about having good people skills, because you just don't want to be that guy that just nobody trusts, and it happens that you're like the leader of that team. You know what I'm saying? A lot of teams that I see in tier 3 have like the biggest dickhead as their IGL, and it's just like, right, you're just not going anywhere, right? Let's say your goal is to make top 50 VLR, like you're not making that goal. I'm telling you right now, unless you have like fucking a Thanos fragger on your team, like you're not making it, right? People need to trust you when you're IGLing. If they don't trust what the fuck you're doing or what you're calling, how is it going to work? You know what I'm saying? So what I mean by valuing your players' trust is actually like trying to like be a leader, be like that person that people can trust when it comes like not even just like inside the game, but also outside of the game, right? Be a good teammate, right? I don't know, man, like there are a lot of things that you can do outside of the game in order to gain your players' trust, right? You can work with them, you can try to help them with whatever it is, whether it's in game or outside of game stuff. Like just be a good teammate, be a good human being. Okay, like basically it means stop being a dickhead, because nobody trusts a dickhead. And if it happens that the fucking asshole on your team happens to be the IGL, then you're just not going anywhere. Okay, so if you want to IGL, you need to make sure that you're actually like you don't necessarily have to be like the nicest person in the world. You just have to reach that minimum threshold that basically means that your teammates trust you as an individual and as their leader. Okay, this is really just nothing too complicated, but valuing your players' trust, like that's like something that a lot of IGLs just don't do, especially in tier 3, because they think they're the shit. They think they're like FNS level calling, but like they just have zero like good people skills, and they just like they're just absolute dickheads, and nobody trusts their calls. Even though you might have like the best call in the world, if people don't trust you, it's not gonna happen. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of like my fourth point for you guys. And again, it's very short. I'm not gonna talk about it way too much. Like it basically just means be a good human being, right? Be conscious of the value that your players' trust can have on not only your calls, but also like on the team's performance overall, right? you know, you see this a lot in like professional sports and stuff like that, where like some people on the team just don't trust the leader or the captain or whatever the fuck you want to call it, and that just creates a bad team overall by default. Even though you have the best players in the world, if they don't trust each other, there's not like they're not going to achieve anything. Okay, so that's my fourth point for you guys. All right, so for this next point and last point, it's going to be taking responsibility for your mistakes. And this is probably the most important one out of like all of these, to be honest, because this one kind of revolves around everything, right? If you don't take responsibility for your own mistakes, people are not going to trust you, which is basically the number 4. You know, you're going to sound way less confident, right? Because people are going to like stop trusting you, and then so you're going to become less confident, you know. So it affects multiple points that I mentioned before, and that's probably why like this is like you see like you visualize like a tree, like this is like the tree itself, and like everything else is like branches and stuff like that. You need to take responsibility for your mistakes. And again, this is not like, I'm not saying don't do bad calls, because everybody is human at the end of the day. Like everybody's going to make mistakes. Every IGL makes bad calls, but you know, it's only a matter of time before they happen. But when they do happen, you need to be able to say, okay, my bad, that was a bad call. Because the reality is a lot of you IGLs out there, and this is probably something that like pisses me off like the most in terms of, you know, coaching Valorant, is like I talk to a lot of players and they're like, yeah, my IGL, like he doesn't do like a lot of bad calls, but when he does, he just blames like, you know, the first thing that he can harp on in order to justify his call. And the reality is, like, if the call was bad, you need to be able to say, okay, that was a bad call, my bad. And nobody's gonna fucking, you know, come after you for making a bad call, because all of the players on your team are also going to do some stupid ass plays that are probably going to make you lose brain cells. Like everybody does those. And in terms of being an IGL, you have that extra responsibility. So obviously, like, you are going to make mistakes trying to accomplish that role as well. So when you make a bad call, all you have to do is like, my bad, that was a bad call or whatever. And you take that as a learning opportunity, and you kind of just apply it, or process it in your brain as to like why it didn't work, or like what was the mistake there, and you just learn and then you move on. Like if you're actually like on the team that you belong, like if you actually belong there and your team is actually has the potential and have the talent, like nobody's going to get mad at you for making a bad call. Whether it's an overtime of like the finals of whatever the fuck tournament you're playing, or just in a regular scrim, like nobody should get mad over a bad call, because the reality is all of these people got together and chose you to be their IGL, like to some degree, and they trust you as their IGL. So, you know, they basically put you there in the first place. I'm not saying that's your excuse, but you know, people have to understand that, you know, putting someone as, you know, in a position where they're basically leading the team, there are going to be mistakes, right, from that person. And you know, it's just a matter of time before it happens. So take responsibility for your mistakes, bro. A lot of you out there make a lot of bad calls, and you're just saying, yeah, it's because you didn't do this properly, it's because you didn't do this properly. Like, yeah, sometimes like your call is going to be good and people fuck it up, like, yeah, for sure. But there are also instances that, this is basically what I'm talking about here, where your call is just absolute dog shit. Like, I don't know what the fuck you're thinking in your head. You just called it. And again, it's fine. Everybody makes mistakes. But you have to be able to, you know, give yourself some criticism and say, okay, like that was bad. And be like actually conscious of what is bad and good. And, you know, you'll be able to say, okay, my bad, guys. Like, that was a bad call. Whatever. Like, that was a bad call because this. You process that through your brain, and then you'll never do it again. That's how it is. There's a big difference between taking responsibility for a mistake and actually trying to excuse it. Like, people who excuse their mistakes, well, the odds of it happening again are higher than if you say, okay, that was a mistake, my bad. Because if you take like the initiative and you actually like are conscious that it was a mistake, that it was bad, well, the odds of you not doing it again are much higher than if you're just trying to excuse it as if it wasn't a mistake. Okay, because sometimes like you'll know it's a mistake, but you just have like a big ass ego and you're gonna say, okay, no, nah, it's someone else's fault or whatever the fuck. Just drop your ego, bro. That's basically what taking responsibility for your mistakes is. And the sooner you'll learn to do that, you'll see that your skill threshold is going to go up like from like by an infinite amount, and it's like it's going to take you to the next level quite literally. And you'll see that your teammates will start to trust you, respect you like a lot more. So that means you're going to be able to be more confident. That means you're going to be able to just like get better calls in, because you're going to feel more confident, because confidence and like quality kind of go together in terms of values when it comes to leadership. So, you know, just do yourself that favor, and like don't be a dickhead. Just take responsibility for your mistakes, and you'll see that your life is going to become a lot easier. All right, guys, so that's basically it for this video. You know, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Now, you know, obviously there are things in there that you guys are probably, like I said, familiar with, or that you already do, but it really just, this video, like the goal of it is for you to watch it, and then after that you need to have that conversation with yourself and reflect and say, okay, like what am I lacking on, or what am I not doing, and what can I improve? Because like even though you might already be doing all these 5 things, there's always room for improvement, right? If you have that mentality that, yo, you're like the perfect IGL, you don't need to improve anything, well, like why did you click on this video in the first place, right? So like there's obviously a reason why you're here, and I feel like just having that conversation with yourself and reflecting is going to sort of highlight what you need to work on and improve. And, you know, from that point, it's going to be up to you to apply it and try to, you know, do your best in order to overcome that sort of either mistake or lack or whatever, you know, your situation might be. So yeah, enough yapping. That's basically it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned stuff. If that's the case, please click on the subscribe button. That's the best way to support me and the content that I'm making. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this video was literally based on a request from a viewer, right? Like you guys can go back in my other videos, check the comments. Like some people were asking for IGL video, sorry, and that's basically what I delivered today, right? I had no plan of doing this when I started my channel whatsoever, but that's something that people wanted to see, so I made it happen, right? So that can also be the case with whatever you want to request next. So if you have something that you want to see in the future, make sure to drop in the comment section, or you can reach out to me on Twitter. Both are fine. I'm going to try to make it happen to the best of my ability. But you have to understand that, you know, obviously I put a lot of time into this, so, you know, the best way to support me is by subscribing. So please subscribe, like the video, you know, share the channel if you want to, whatever you have to do. Like I said, I'll try to make you guys' requests happen in the near future. But yeah, other than that, I hope you guys have a, you know, good weekend, and I'll see you guys in the next one.